So I want to talk a bit about implementing trade-offs in flux balance analysis, because I think they can be quite helpful at solving certain problems. My first slide is maybe a bit redundant for this audience, but basically I am still a believer in this process that we can use genome sequence data to produce metabolic models that we can then basically use these informations that we gain from sequencing a community or whatever it is you want to study, and construct compartments of genomes here and metabolically reconstruct genomes, and then put them back into a community model and see what it actually is that the community does, what it produces, what interactions are taking place, and maybe we can learn something from that. So that is quite attractive, I think, to go from purely from the genetic information to modeling what a community actually is doing. I couldn't agree more with Daniel Segre when he was saying that we should treat communities as sort of emergent phenomena rather than imposing any optimization at the community level. So that's why we deal with multi-species models in a dynamic fashion, and in that way you can have multiple flux balance analysis running basically their own optimization function, and then they see a common medium, which is some sort of physico-chemical ODE model. They optimize their flow, give a growth rate, tell you what they consume, what they produce, and that you use to update the medium. And in that fashion, if two models consume the same substrate, that obviously creates a competitive situation. And if one model produces something that the other one can use, then you get a outline for a food chain or even a cooperation forming. So these are then emergent phenomena, and you just iterate over the time steps, obviously, to get a dynamic time course of this community model. So this sounds pretty attractive, but there are problems attached to the uptake of substrates, of course, because normally what you do in FBA is you set your model on the uptake fluxes as you have, you tune it to your experiment basically, and then let's say, so these are 15 growth rates produced on these substrates here you see on the left, so these are 15 carbon sources on a basic E. coli model from the Ort paper 2010, and they get quite good growth rates for their model, but this is done by setting each carbon source to 20 millimoles uptake and the rest to 0. So then you iterate through the carbon sources and you get this picture. What happens if you set all of them to 20 millimoles is you get a doubling time of 3 minutes. Because flux balance analysis doesn't know what to do with it, it's just additive. It will say, you give me 15 sources, I use 15 sources at the maximum flow rate. So this is truly a limitation if you combine different models, because if there's multiple substrates available, then this will lead to unrealistic behavior, essentially. So one way to deal with this is adding higher level constraints, and what I mean by this, I want to sort of show in this cartoon here. So if you assume a flux balance model and you have two substrates here, substrate 1 and substrate 2, and you put an uptake flux of 10, whatever the units that may be, that doesn't really matter now, and you have these two substrates produce different amount of ATPs in their pathway. So if you would optimize this with a flux balance analysis, it would tell you that you produce 50 ATP because you have 20 on the upper and 30 on the lower, because it would say I take 10 of each, that's my maximum limit, and I take that. But however, it is quite easy to see that the upper pathway doesn't really make sense in this scenario, because if you have both substrates unlimited available, then you could replace all the enzymes that are required to run this upper pathway, or the space, the ribosomes you need to synthesize these enzymes, whatever it is, these resources that the pathway needs, you could just replace them with this other pathway, and you would go to 60 ATP, because you have now basically optimized your space available in the cell and your resources to maximize the ATP production. So this can be added by adding a higher level constraint of constraining the basically, instead of constraining individual substrates, you could constrain total uptake or total flux in the cell would do a similar level. And there are two quite neat approaches available that have been published and produce quite good results. So the one is molecular crowding approach by Begg and co-workers, which takes the notion of the cytoplasm being a limited space essentially, and then you can apply different crowding coefficients. We heard a bit of that. So you can weight certain reactions if you know that they need a lot of enzyme or they're very slow enzymes, so you would need more of those enzymes. You can weigh these reactions, but essentially you're limiting total flux. That's what you're doing. And the second approach is the membrane economics approach, which does a similar thing, just considers the membrane of the cell and says, well, you cannot have infinite amount of substrates transported, so there's a limit on total uptake into the model. And our own take on this is that we use basically something like this membrane economics in an evolvable fashion. So again, I want to use this little toy model here to walk you through this. And this time it's a bit different. We have a substrate and oxygen that are co-utilized in this lower pathway. So this could be some sort of respiration, and you could have a fermentative pathway that doesn't use oxygen. And what we're now going to do is we're going to constrain this total uptake flux on a global level. So we're not constraining any of the individual uptake fluxes, but rather we're setting a global constraint. And if you now allow for evolution of these constraints, so basically you create a subset of different models that vary in their constraint values, and then you compete them against each other, then you might get something like this. You get a mutant here which has an upregulated substrate uptake, and hence it will have a higher flow through this upper pathway here. However, it doesn't require oxygen for the upper pathway, so the net output of ATP is increased essentially. And you could have further evolution in that direction when you end up on the upper right with a cell that is only doing the fermentation, for example, but has now a net output of 40 ATP, while the ancestor had a 30 ATP output essentially. And so what you are then, what this leads to is this yield versus rate debate. So we heard that FBA should optimize for yield, and that is the classical FBA case is, I mean, in this scenario you would have a rate of 30 ATP over time, whatever time you add here, and 3 ATP per amount of S1 substrate you pump in, so the blue arrow. While in this case you have a lower yield essentially because you have more substrate taken up, but you have a higher rate produced because it's the pathway that requires less total substrate in this case, or oxygen. So it requires less membrane area if you want. So by optimizing for this membrane area, you optimize actually for the high rate case. And so we run this on a test case on the Richard Lenski experiment with the glucose minimal medium. And so this is a tree of ancestry that you get of this, the ancestor model on the left being this glucose acetate generalist, and then you allow for evolution of the uptake, and you diverge into actually coexisting models. So you get a glucose specialist that are only taking glucose, and you get acetate specialists which deal with the acetate left over by the glucose specialist, and these models then coexist and are not replaced mutually basically. So to conclude, implementing trade-offs can allow us to handle this multiple substrate issue, for example, which I think is a prerequisite to build community models to be able to deal with this. And so evolutionary approach allows additionally to have bifurcation events, so you would never get out of an FBA telling you need two different flow patterns in that model to optimally use the environment, but the evolutionary FBA can tell you this and say, well, actually this model will sort of bifurcate into two states and then optimally use this environment. So that's it. Thank you.
Questions, if there are any?
Yes. So you're currently using a kind of an evolutionary algorithm to get to your optimal distribution. Is there anything better than that would be feasible?
So I mean, you can instantaneously optimize the constraints. If you are just interested in getting to this high yield, high rate business, right?
Yeah.
You could instantaneously optimize by just adding a the easiest approach is you add some sort of outer layer, and you say, well, you can transport everything, but just as a limited flux or something. You could probably also minimize for total flux or similar. So these two approaches implement this. So in these publications, you will find the detailed way of implementing both these approaches. So they're quite similar. Just one limits total flux basically in the cytoplasm, the other one on the membrane uptake fluxes.
So since you're looking at the Lenski lines, have you compared this to I know Chris Marks and Will Harcombe had some analysis of the Lenski lines in terms of flux balance. Have you compared, or do you know?
You mean this?
I think it's an.
I've read one publication where they said that actually the Lansky lines are the strains that do not fit the FBA predictions or something, but the rest does or something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Which, you know,
No, I haven't compared that.
I think it's. I mean, I'd be curious to see whether you find the same, basically, this approach or something different. I think it's very interesting because I think their claim was that they were not getting close to the predicted FBA optimum, but again, I think it's very much in that case depends on whether by optimal your expectation is optimal yield or optimal rate. So it's really delicate.
Okay, any more questions? Now let's thank all our speakers, including Toby.